Hey everybody, this is Ask Our Educator Week 4 Q&A. I would recommend to get creative. So you said you have pots of all sizes, so that increases what you can try growing. I would recommend trying something like a sweet potato in a larger pot, maybe like a 10-inch or 12-inch pot, one of the ones maybe around this size or something, and it has some depth to it. And you can literally grab an organic sweet potato from the store, or a friend, or one you may just kind of have laying around in your pantry. And you can either stick it in water to get it to start to root, or you can just stick it right in that pot, and you're going to have some bountiful greens all summer that you can eat. The sweet potato greens are edible. And then in the winter, you'll be able to harvest those potatoes, and you'll have some sweet potatoes to eat. I would also recommend maybe some green harmony spinach, which is a perennial spinach we often talk about for its hardiness and its ability to make it through the heat of the summer. Maybe try something like strawberries, maybe peppers, eggplant. Those will all do well in pots and are good for the summer. And something besides herbs that you can kind of harvest throughout the summer, and you'll have something that grows well for your pots. So this is all going to depend on the amount of soil you need. So if you were looking at the square footage of your space, if you start to calculate how much space you have, how deep your raised beds are when you're calculating your square footage, once you can calculate that, you'll have a better idea of what your costs are going to be. So if you're not having a lot to fill, if your soil is going to end up being on a minimal amount, say you're just filling up one bed, one raised bed, it's probably cheaper for you to go to some of the local landscaping stores or nurseries. So Bay Area, Turner's, they will all have different selections of soil you can choose from, whether it be for raised beds or pots, or whatever the method that you're using or you want. So once you get an idea of how much soil you will need, it'll be a lot easier to go and order that. So if you are getting a large amount, it may be better for you to call a local business that will deliver the soil. So they'll deliver it by the yard. So those are pretty large quantities of soil. So you most likely won't need that much, but if you are looking to do this large scale and you're filling multiple beds, you may just want to have them go ahead and deliver that to your house. And then you can just fill it up in wheelbarrows and kind of dump it into your beds accordingly. So yeah, just really look at the amount and the quantity that you may need to fill those beds. So that's very interesting that the aphids are on your marigolds. They're typically kind of deterrents for pests. So usually we plant those kind of in between our edible foods to kind of help keep pests away. So if you're trying to avoid poisons, one thing you can do for a super natural alternative is to order ladybugs, and you can release those in your yard or into your garden. And aphids are natural food for the ladybugs, so they actually they eat the aphids for dinner. So that's one thing you can do, and that's kind of fun to do with the family or the kids to kind of release the ladybugs. It's a fun activity to do. If you're looking for something that's a little bit more concentrated, you can use a neem oil spray, a garlic spray, or a soap spray that you can kind of mix up in a spray bottle and just kind of spray that over your plants, and that should help quite a bit with those aphids. Yes, so this really is all going to depend on your specifications. So, what size do you want your beds? How high? How wide? How long? On average, the costs are going to range from $60 to $80, maybe $60 to $100, depending on if you're building this from scratch and you're buying your wood and you're building it. There also are some options for some kits, raised bed kits that you can get from like Home Depot or Lowe's. They do sell pre-made kits that all you have to do is kind of just put them together, and those range, on average around $100. And that is just for, on average about maybe say a foot high, maybe 6 or 7 feet by 4 feet size bed. So stay tuned, because we do plan on having a video focusing on starting a raised bed, or a how-to video for building raised beds. So if you do have a bed that you're working on right now, before you get to adding your soil and planting, what you want to do is put a natural weed barrier down there. So you could go and buy some of the weed cloth from the store, but an easier, essentially free way to do this would be to collect some cardboard from local stores. The grocery stores usually give that stuff away for free. As long as it doesn't have plastic or labels or colorful ink on there that may leach out, just regular old cardboard, you can actually lay that cardboard down on the ground. Then you're going to come back in and put your soil on top, and that's going to prevent weeds and other things from growing through your beds and disturbing your food. Awesome. So what's great about this is that fall is by far one of the best times to grow for us here in South Texas. So as the heat dissipates and we get into the cooler temperatures, you can grow just about anything you could imagine. So we look forward to fall for growing our root vegetables, so carrots, potatoes, onions, beets, all the good root vegetables that we typically expect in a garden. Fall is the time for us that we'll be getting those planted, and all the way into winter and even spring, you'll continuously have those plants. So that's a great time to get started. It's also a great time for things like brassicas, so that's your broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Those all grow fantastic in the cooler weather. Lettuce greens grow great as well. Herbs, and again, potatoes grow well in the cooler temperatures. So all of those foods, you are going to have an unlimited amount of foods to choose from when it comes to fall. And what's nice about that, when the kids get involved with growing the food, you'll actually notice they tend to eat quite a bit more of the food that they get to grow. There's just something about it that it really encourages them to eat more and try something new. So grow a large variety of stuff, and maybe incorporate that more into dinner or lunch, and see how much more willing they are to try new foods, some new vegetables. Okay, so for the yellowing leaves, hopefully all the rain we've been getting recently will help do a little bit of reviving to the yellowing of the leaves. As for the scale issue, these are actually tiny insects that suck up the sap from the branches or from the tree, and they excrete essentially this sweet kind of honeydew substance that accumulates on the leaves and the branches and the fruit, and eventually that honeydew turns to essentially a mold that can interfere with the leaves absorbing the sunlight, and that is where they can kind of die back and become yellow or just kind of look funky. So what's interesting about that is that honeydew substance, that sweet substance that they release, the ants actually form a relationship with these creatures where the ants will actually help move them from place to place so they can have more food to eat. And that's where it kind of spreads over your entire tree and can kind of cause an infestation. So what you can do, if you do notice, if you're seeing ants coming back and forth, the ants aren't necessarily doing the damage, but they're helping move those creatures around that are then causing the damage to the tree. So to prevent that, you can actually get duct tape, and you can look this up, but you're essentially creating a barrier along the base of the tree somewhere, where you're taking the sticky side of the duct tape and you kind of wrap it around so the sticky side out of the trunk of your tree. And that will prevent the ants from going up, which will then prevent those creatures from getting moved around. So then that will give you a little bit more time to focus on fixing the problem. So then go ahead and try the neem oil in those areas that you're noticing the infestations with the scale, or notice the damaging on the leaves. And maybe try the neem oil there and kind of experiment in a few areas where it is bearing fruit, just to kind of test it. And then on top of that, that sticky trap with the ants, one of those things may help and get you on track for getting that tree up and healthy again. Cool. Thank you all again for tuning in for Ask Your Educator Q&A Week 4. Stay tuned for our opportunity to send in questions again for our next episode.